Welcome to this EDUcast, Customer Experience Assurance, delivering high-value customer experience testing services to the contact center. And the whole point of this is, if you don't know what your contact center is doing, you make assumptions about your customer satisfaction, and that's not valid and not useful. As we always do, we talk about our agenda. And we're going to talk about experience and what a customer experience assurance is, architectures and key features we need, advanced platform modules identifying opportunities for you, competitive differentiators, and in the end, Nectar, Tim Armstrong, is going to talk about the contact center tool set that we have. So Tim, let's start off with the first slide. Customer experience is a brand experience and is an integral part of digital transformation. How does customer experience influence brand experience and their reputation?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. It's a great question and a good place to start. I think that the era that we're in right now, really at a very high level is very often referred to as the experience economy. And I like the term experience economy as a descriptor for how brands and companies should be thinking about overall customer contact, and certainly contact centers play a critical role in this. I think there's a natural tendency to think we're in an era of self-service, and so if a customer wants to get something done, they can just simply go to the websites or go to their app and accomplish what they want to accomplish with the app or the website. But those tools, as powerful as they've become, are not comprehensive, and they don't have everything that a customer might need to get done, and they might be challenging for some customers to use for whatever reason. And so when a customer does choose to use the contact center to call in, oftentimes that is the last resort. They've probably already tried to do something online or in a self-service fashion by that time. So this really becomes the front door of actually trying to make contact with someone at the company to address an issue that perhaps has been brewing with them for quite some time. But ultimately, it's the experience that they're going to have that's going to define what they think of that company, and in many cases, what type of loyalty they'll have with that company.
The next slide talks about the interactions with customer expectations. How have the expectations of the customer changed? Because I know I get very frustrated now where I didn't get frustrated in the past, and we're very forgiving.
Isn't that interesting? That's true, and I think that a lot of people have that same experience. As a populace, we're very demanding now of our brands, and I think that it is because we all are very used to answers being at our fingertips for just about everything that we want to look up or everything that we want to get done. And so when it appears to a customer calling into a contact center that things aren't working as they should, there is an increased level of frustration that perhaps we in the past would have just taken as a matter of course. But customer expectations continue to increase, and brands are becoming more savvy and more aware of the challenges that they have with the customer interactions. And in the context of contact center, again, in many cases, by the time someone calls into a contact center, it's very likely that they already have a heightened degree of frustration or a heightened degree of a need for a good experience, because so many companies are forcing customers to use the self-service options first, that they may have already hit a number of stumbling blocks before they arrived at the contact center. So I think that's the other factor, is that we used to just call the toll-free number all the time as the first step. Now, very often, we don't call the toll-free number until we're a little bit further down the path, and perhaps our frustration levels and expectations are that much higher.
Let's talk more about that testing. We're talking about manual and automated testing. Would you contrast the difference between the two, the benefits and value?
I think if there's one thing that I would hope to have folks get out of today's EDUcast is really this, and I think that there are so many organizations out there today who are still struggling with manual testing of their IVR and contact center environments. And as IVR becomes more complex and contact center environments become more complex and the customer expectations are increasingly high, manual testing really is inadequate for a number of reasons. For starters, it takes people to do, and it's just generally inefficient. You've got highly skilled, highly capable, for lack of a better way of saying it, expensive people, just sitting there on their cell phones dialing numbers to test an IVR. It takes a lot of time, and of course is massively inefficient. The other thing that happens is that it's very prone to human error. If you're doing something that is sort of boring work like this, you're likely to make mistakes. You're likely to skip steps or hit a wrong number or enter in something, by mistake. And those are good experiences to have because then you see how the platform responds. But in general, that it's just not something that's very repeatable. The other thing that you end up with is because it is human, kind of effort that's doing the manual testing, there's a good deal of inconsistency between how you might perform the test versus how I perform the test. And so in aggregate, are our test results effective or accurate if you took a different approach than I did? And then I think obviously it's very difficult to have any sort of reporting. It's all just manual data entry, again wasting time. The final factor in terms of manual testing that tends to be a real challenge is that it's very much a moment in time. So what I think we understand as technology professionals is that throughout a 24-hour day, systems go under various loads of stress for a variety of reasons, either because of IT operations around patches and upgrades or backups, or different types of network traffic that flow at different times of the day. There's a very real chance that testing done at 10 a.m. Eastern on a Tuesday may look successful, but that same testing done at 10 p.m. on a Friday is going to look a whole lot different. And if you're just relying on manual testing, you're never going to catch those things, and so that becomes a real challenge. And I think that there's still a lot of organizations. Our biggest sort of competition in this space, as we think about what Nectar does, which we'll talk about later, is people just doing this manual testing and not realizing that there are opportunities and there are tools and platforms out there that can automate, very efficiently this, the testing capabilities. So certainly, I won't go through all the points, but certainly I think that when you look at automating this, there's a tremendous amount of benefit for the organization that obviously saves a lot of time and has the opportunity to increase the level of confidence that the managers and leaders of these organizations responsible for contact center have. But most importantly, it helps make sure that the customer is really having a great experience, and that you've tested it in real world scenarios in a programmatic and planful and automated way.
Now, moving to the next slide, we have the word cloud-based testing. All right. How does cloud-based testing improve the customer experience? And being cloud-based, you must have insights across multiple customers. What kind of insights have you been able to collect?
Yeah, that's right. And we've found this to be the best approach, although in some cases there are certainly opportunities to do some things on premise. But because of the way that SIP trunks work now globally, we've been able to build a model where we can, from the Nectar data centers, the Nectar cloud instances, create, regular PSTN calls, obviously from our cloud instances that traverse the PSTN normally, and just as a call would coming from a customer. And I think that's really key to how this testing works. there's a variety of different testing approaches that you can take for the IVR and contact center environments. But unless you're really testing using the same path, again, coming in over the PSTN, then you're not doing full end-to-end testing of what that customer experience journey really looks like. From our perspective, having had the cloud service and being able to see across a lot of different organizations, we've been able to identify and we know where common problems typically are, and we talk to a lot of contact center DevOps teams and understand where a lot of concerns are. And every organization is different, of course, depending on how many changes they make on a daily basis to their IVR environment, how much application integration they have for the purposes of automating IVR, for things like looking up an account balance or something like that. But it's all related and a lot of common issues across the organizations. One of the things I'll point out here on this slide is that there is also in the upper right-hand corner the idea of cloud contact center, and that is increasingly becoming something that we have a lot of interest from our customer base in testing, as people look to either augment their on-premise contact center environments or perhaps even replace or migrate to cloud-based solutions. That drives a lot of interest right now in what we're doing, because there is always going to be a little bit of underlying concern, at least for now, a little bit of underlying concern of, hey, can I really keep call quality where I need it to be for my customer journey? Can I really keep the experience strong, with a cloud telephony-based product, and having that all be in the cloud? And that's another place where testing becomes a really valuable tool to help organizations assess whether or not that's a good fit for them.
Since we're talking about testing, where does Nectar fit into this environment? And I think what your whole theme would be, you need to test to know what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. You do need to test to know what's going on. Nectar has traditionally been in the monitoring space, and so we have a strong history, as we'll talk about in a minute, in the monitoring space. But testing is an added layer to that that allows you to, again, simulate more of the real-world experience. And with our new product, CX Assurance, what this really is designed to do is to test those high-value contact center customer journeys, and we can do that with some really robust tools that go far beyond just the simple validation that press 1 for this or press 2 for that, or say your account number here. We can really go quite advanced in terms of being able to help help enterprises navigate that so that their customer journey is protected.
And Nectar's been in this business an awfully long time. Testing is part of your background. How have you developed this knowledge?
Yeah, that's right. Testing has been part of what we've done. As I mentioned, we really started as a monitoring company, so the idea was that we would be monitoring the health and performance of an environment, and that was a unique niche when we started, to have advanced monitoring and then accompanying that appropriate alerting and event management. That really was how Nectar built its business and continues to be the core of our business, is that monitoring for health performance and key performance and health indicators of UC or collaboration and contact center platforms. So that's something we've been doing a long time. That we added a testing product a number of years ago for testing SIP and specifically for testing networks for the readiness of VoIP. That's becoming a little less of an issue, although we still see a lot of interest in that today with cloud migrations. But network readiness was something that we really have done testing with for a long time. What's new is this outside-in PSTN-based testing, specifically geared towards contact center and IVR environments. So it's a nice rounding out of our portfolio.
I've done a lot of system and network testing, and I can relate to your comments here. What are the key features that you think are important for customer experience testing?
One of the really critical factors that is relevant to the people doing the testings, the testing activities, the DevOps teams or the operations teams responsible for the IVR that are our customers, is how much time it takes to set up the test and how much time it takes to build the what we refer to as test campaigns. One of the key features that we have in CX Assurance is a auto discovery tool. And the auto discovery tool is incredibly powerful because what it allows you to do is build those test campaigns much more easily. So in other words, when you first want to start testing, it's important that the platform doing the testing knows what the expected experience should be. In other words, if you to use a simple example, if you press 1 for this and that takes you to one tree, and you press 2 for that, it takes you to another tree, or you press 6 for a foreign language, or kind of whatever it might be. In order to populate our system with the appropriate information to know how the test should perform, if we didn't have auto discovery, that would be very manual. And so the auto discovery allows you to you give us the phone number you want us to dial, and we will just dial that phone number and we'll listen. And we do some really powerful voice to text or voice recognition software on our side. So we will listen for the prompts, and then we will record that and then build the test scripts. And so that works very powerfully and saves a tremendous amount of time.
Would you review the components of your assurance platform?
Sure, I'll highlight a couple of key ones here. I think that from kind of the perspective of unique capabilities, our load and performance testing is certainly one that's relevant to people that need that. A great example is any organization that has seasonal call loads. So perhaps something that is based on the time of the year, holidays, for example, or other enterprise or organizational activities that are driven by the calendar. When you expect peak loads, it's important that you test the environment for the performance in high load or high capacity environments, and that is something that we can do. We literally can spin up thousands of simultaneous calls, all testing for functionality and continuity to help the testing and help ultimately help the managers feel confident that their contact center environment can handle the key load. And then the final thing I'll just point out is the idea that we have the ability to do ongoing monitoring as well. So if you want to have something that's just testing, perhaps for compliance reasons, you need to demonstrate that you're testing. We have that ability to produce ongoing monitoring reports as well.
Not everyone can imagine how to apply these tools. Can you provide some scenarios for us that help us understand more?
Yeah, the teams that are responsible for these tools, are very often challenged with having a lot of different organizations that they have to interact with, business units and different segments within the enterprise IT teams. But there's a number of key things that we see as real drivers. So for folks that are out there kind of learning where this plays, I would say certainly anytime that someone is migrating or expanding a contact center environment, that's a really great use case and a great time to bring in a testing tool like this. Any kind of new application integration project, such as a big CRM integration project, if you're rolling out something with advanced CRM or application integration, also a really good time to take a look at bringing in automated testing. Finally, compliance and just being able to prove enforcement of compliance. Here we're talking about payment card compliance, but there's a number of other compliance drivers that might also be factors for certain organizations, particularly in the federal or government, local government space and education as well. And certainly we see a tremendous amount of interest in this in what I'll call the very high value contact center platforms, such as traders in the financial services industry, where transactions have very high dollar amounts tied to them, and if calls don't perform as expected, can have very, very significant financial impact on the organizations. So certainly those also drive a lot of interest in testing.
There are a lot of competitors for testing systems on the market. What makes Nectar's customer experience assurance testing different than the others?
Well, we want people to be able to do this on their own. We're not necessarily going to market with a model that comes with a ton of required consulting services. We have services and our partners have services available, but the tool is really built so that end users are in charge of their own testing, and they can build their campaigns, they can modify their campaigns and optimize them to work for the way that they want to work. I think that that intuitive nature of the platform and just the way it works is really key for the user experience. But also what's important about how we're going to market is the flexibility of how we've packaged the product. So the real key for us is that you don't necessarily have to buy different ports for different services. We have a very flexible test port configuration model, and so you can have both monitoring and testing on the same ports, for example, and you can of course do that in a very global environment. There's one other key differentiator that Nectar brings to the table, but we'll cover that in the next slide.
Then take us through how this all works with the contact center.
Yeah, thanks. And this is really the most important key differentiator that Nectar has to offer, is that we really have the most robust and full-featured set of capabilities for contact center operations teams in the marketplace. So we offer the complete suite, from the outside-in testing of what we've spent our time here talking about for the most part, all the way through to really advanced diagnostics of how SIP call flows are being handled, and where signaling issues might be, and being able to really see the different call segments all correlated together, and that's in our Nectar Diagnostics platform, which is a time-tested platform designed to really look at not only call quality but signaling information on the wire. And Foundation, again, our core product that we have continued to evolve and invest in over the last decade, is the platform that allows us to do the monitoring and alerting when things within the monitored systems aren't going awry. So when you stitch, or are going awry perhaps, so when you stitch all of this together, what you really have is a very comprehensive contact center operations platform that covers all of the key components that would impact potentially a customer experience journey.
Now, we've talked a lot about tools for the contact center, but can these tools also be supportive of unified communications and collaboration? How do they help?
Yeah, very definitely. So you're right, contact center has been our focus, but in this session, but there's no question that we see all of these tools applied to a variety of on-premise, cloud, and hybrid environments for collaboration in general, just voice and video, unified communications. And that's everything from, again, the monitoring being done by Foundation, the advanced SIP troubleshooting enabled by Nectar Diagnostics, that network readiness for voice and video that I talked about is our earlier testing product, which is Nectar Perspective, and then finally CX Assurance, the newest product in our portfolio that is designed primarily for the outside in. But it's important to point out here that CX Assurance can be used for testing any kind of environment. So even conference call bridges and how those interact, a little bit more of a traditional UC product. CX Assurance is a great tool to test to make sure that those are working as expected as well.
On this slide, there are 3 items here that are good resources for dealing with customer assurance as Nectar approaches it. It's a brief and also solutions video. I'd like to thank you very much for today's enlightening and I would say tutorial on customer experience. Thank you again.
Thank you, Gary.